Basics of JavaBeans. First, I think most of you have heard of JavaBeans, but you may not use JavaBeans much. So in this class, we will use JavaBeans a lot in our Java web applications. All right, let's start with the basics part first. What is a JavaBean? JavaBean, so here, let us describe JavaBeans from several aspects. First, JavaBeans are Java software components used in Java software development. Initially, JavaBeans were created for desktop GUI programming. Early times, desktop GUI programming. In order to make a lot of GUI components, buttons, bar, a lot of GUI components, fast, quick for Java programmers to create, use, write code on those components. JavaBeans were created, plug in and play, so convenient. But that's the desktop time, desktop applications. But after web applications become more and more important, dominant the market. So then people need to consider using JavaBeans in web applications. All right, so here, let us learn how to use JavaBeans to help us do Java coding efficiently in Java web applications. All right, the JavaBeans components are now web components. I mentioned this point before. All right, although we use JavaBeans components a lot, web applications, but we do not treat JavaBeans as web components. Why? The reason is very simple. To be a web component, that component must rely on web environment to run. All right, for our JavaBeans, it does not rely on web environment. For non-web environment, you can also use JavaBeans. Okay, so, but the web environment, just one important place you can use JavaBeans. You can use in desktop programming, even just ordinary Java programming. You can use JavaBeans. All right. But here, let me just recall a little bit. I mentioned I list 3 web components before. So here, let me just review a little bit. The first web component, servlets. Second type, JSP. All right, because they rely on web environment, right? Otherwise, you cannot use JSP servlets out of the web programming environment. All right, the last one called web services. Okay, web services. These 3 types of web components. All right, Next, JavaBeans must be serializable. Look at this terminology, serializable. I don't know if you have heard of it or not. This concept, pretty hard to understand. Later, my next slide, I will spend a lot of time to explain this concept. you may not need to deal with it. Yeah, actually, for most of the Java program, you may not need to deal with it. Yeah. But here, you may have some small chance, little chance, probably 1% chance. You may see this concept, this, term in your Java code. So here, if you have this background knowledge, you won't be panicked. Okay, you will be fine. Otherwise, you will feel, oh, what's that? How do I handle it? Yeah, all right. Need to send data. So here, let me just first, let me give you general description, serializable. But my next slide, I will give you detailed description. All right. You need to send data in JavaBeans through network. Here, JavaBeans, there is a important usage for JavaBeans. Yeah. One, most common way to use JavaBeans, store data in JavaBeans. Okay, or we treat it as a data structure. We treat JavaBeans as our data structure. We organize our data in JavaBeans. Yeah, why we use data structure, right? We want to organize our data in some data structure. Yeah. Then you can see when you send data with JavaBeans, you can send organize the data. How about that? You can send organize the data. Okay, yeah. Send data in an organized way in the form of JavaBeans objects. All right, yeah, okay. That's the most common way to use JavaBeans. Yeah. Although we may have other ways, right? More than this. That's the basic way, all right, to use JavaBeans. JavaBeans are Java classes that have properties stored in private instance variables. Properties. The data stored in JavaBeans, we call the properties. That's special terminology. It is related to private instance variable, related. So here I just say related, but not exactly the same. Related. How related? Yeah. Why not exactly the same? I will explain later. Okay. Yeah. Properties, instance variables. Yeah. All right. Store data in properties. The reason we use properties, we store data. Okay. All right. With setters and getters. Setters, getters. Okay. Yeah. Setter means set. Then property name. You put some property name. Get. You put some property name. That's what we call the setters and the getters. Okay. All right. Then supporting data binding. This is another important concept called data binding. JSP, data binding. I will explain this important concept later in the next few slides. All right, so, and then later, after I explain the basic concepts, I will give you a case study example. In that case study example, you will see all the features we need to use related to JavaBeans. You will see, including the data binding feature. We will see how those features work in that case study example. All right, yeah. Next. All right. C.2. This time, let me explain serializable Java objects. This concept, quite abstract. Yeah. So you really need to put some effort to understand this serializable concept. Okay, all right, so let's start. Serializable objects in scopes. Why we use serializable objects? In the previous slide, the reason we use serializable because we need to send Java objects through networks. In order to send Java objects through networks without any problem, we need this property, serializable property. Now, let me explain why. What's that? Serialization concept first. What's the serialization concept? Yeah. All right, so here, the process of converting an object into a stream of bytes. When you send data, you need to make a stream of bytes to send data through networks, right? Stream of bytes. Here, and converting an object, a Java object, that's the binary data, right? You need to send a binary data as a stream of bytes through networks, right? Yeah. In order to store the object or transmit it to memory, a database, or a file. All right, so look at that. Transmission, data transmission. All right. When you send the data, your data may go to typically these three places. Memory, come and go back and forth from memory. Memory is one of the locations that stores your data. All right, yeah. Database. You may have a chance to store your Java object in a database. The second possibility. The third one, you store your Java object on the hard disk as a file. Hard disk as a file. All right, these three possibilities. All right, then you also, you can go to these three different places through networks. There is network involved in data transmission. Also think about network. All right, yeah. So here, look at the diagram. Yeah, object needs to be converted to a stream of bytes going to these three different locations. Then you may have the conversion problem. Here, when we talk about the conversion problem, how do you know you can convert your data 100% without loss? How can you guarantee your data conversion is 100% convertible. Let me say it in this way. Why? Yeah, because look at when your data is generated in main memory, that environment is main memory in the binary format. The binary format, many special binary representations could be used, right? Large number of different binary representations could be used, and some of the binary representations cannot be converted to some corresponding representable symbols on a hard disk. Memory, hard disk, they have different environment. Main memory, hard disk, they have different environment, right? Some representations you have in main memory, you may not have such representations in hard disk. All right, that's the the basic fact. All right, if that happens, then your binary data cannot be converted 100% intact when you transmit it to hard disk, for example. You may lose something. All right, you may lose something. Then we don't want that happen. All right, we don't want that situation happen. Okay, so how to avoid that, right? Conversion problem. How to avoid that? The binary data. Java created this concept, use serialization to help you avoid that kind of potential data loss. So Java define this concept, serialization, and it can define what kind of Java objects are serializable. All right, if you follow the serialization requirement, you make your Java objects serializable, then that object can be 100% convertible to other forms on hard disk, through network, transmit through network, store on hard drive with 100% guaranteed, 100% conversion. That's the importance of serialization. All right. So, but here I cannot describe under what specific requirement we can say an object is serializable, because that could be very difficult to tell for ordinary Java programmers, because usually we don't want to get into that kind of details. All right, but based on our experience, most of the Java objects we use, they are serializable. Only very small fraction of Java objects, usually they are very complicated, very special, very complicated Java objects that could be non-serializable. But we may not be able to tell if it is serializable or not by ourselves. Fortunately, we rely on Java compiler to tell us. All right, Java compiler, very powerful, it can tell us. So we do not need to memorize complex rules for serialization, right? We leave that part to Java compilers. All right, so let's look at that part. Yeah, all right. Its main purpose is to save the state of an object. This concept, the state of an object. in order to be able to recreate it when needed. We know the object could have different states in different period of time, right? States, yeah. We mean the data pieces you store at certain time, all right? Yeah. First name, last name, some specific data pieces. But after some period of time, those data pieces could change. So we call they change to different state. So that's what we call the state of an object. So we can change the data values. So we change the state of the object. All right. So to save the state of an object, in order to be able to recreate it when needed, yeah. So you save, you store with networks involved, with different storage media used, consider. Yeah. But when you do those things, you will get your data 100% preserved without any change. That's the purpose of using serialization concept. All right. Serializable Java objects. How do we as Java programmers, how do we make some Java objects serializable? We only need to do things like this. A Java object is serializable if its class or any of its superclasses implements either this serializable interface or its sub-interface. All right, so that's simple. Most of the time, we implement this interface, serializable interface. Then you can tell the compiler, I want to make this Java object serializable. Then you ask the compiler to help you enforce the serialization rules for you. You do not need to check it by yourself. Compiler will tell you which part you may have some violation, we need to fix it. So we rely on compilers to control that serialization part for us. All right, yeah. Next, let me explain the serializable interface. This interface is very special, all right? So in my next slide, let me explain the serializable interface for you to get a better understanding. All right, next. Develop serializable classes. How do we develop serializable classes? Right. Implement serializable interface. Yeah. We just write implement serializable interface. That's it. Then the remaining code, as usual, we write a typical Java class. Okay. Only this part implement serializable interface. Okay. All right. Yeah. And this interface is different from our general, usual Java interfaces. This one we call a tag interface. So what's that? A tag interface. It is used as a tag. All right. Yeah. For the usual other interfaces, we do not use them as a tag because we need to declare a list of methods to be implemented in those interfaces. If you declare methods, then we do not call a tag interface. So how do you get a tag interface? No method declared in it. It's just like an empty interface, no method inside. All right. But why you need to use it? We use it to tell compiler, you just enforce serialization rules for us, for me, all right? Yeah, so it's a tag, okay? Compiler, when a compiler sees this tag, it knows what to do automatically, all right? That's the purpose of this interface. Yeah. Just do some special communication with the compiler, all right? Yeah, so that's why we call it tag interface, all right? Okay, all right. When your class implements it, yeah, the compiler in IDE, yeah, will check if your class is serializable. If not, it will complain. Okay, so you need to fix it. Yeah, you need to, find a way to fix that problem. All right, yeah. If your class does not implement it, yeah, because I believe for most of you, you never used this interface before, right? Yeah. For most, 99% of Java programs, they never implement this serializable interface. Although they develop JavaBeans, but they never implement this interface. But it still works fine. Why is that? So those Java programmers, they develop, hundreds of JavaBeans, but they never use serializable interface. That's very common. Yeah. There is no problem for that, because if you do not declare a serializable interface, you do not need to ask help from compiler, right? Because your JavaBeans structure is so simple, you don't need help from compiler. You already know your JavaBeans is serializable, because structure is so simple, all right? You use that kind of structure all the time without any problem. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, so that's your responsibility. If you are not sure, then you use serializable. You implement serializable interface. If you are not sure, if you are already quite sure, you don't need to use that. All right? Yeah. So the compiler does not check it for you. Yeah. If you do not use that interface, the compiler does not do anything, any special check for you. But you don't need that, right? Yeah. You already know it is serializable, but by yourself, by your own experience. Yeah. All right. You are responsible to make it serializable. All right. So only when you need compiler help you, then you declare it. Okay. So only need it when necessary. Yeah. All right. All right. So that is the serializable concept. All right. It is, yeah, although a little abstract, but it should not be too hard to understand. Okay. So here, the reason I give you this kind of background, you have very little chance to see it in your real world experience, but the main purpose here, I give you this knowledge. When you see it, you won't be panicked, all right? Because you know its background, you know how to use it. Okay, you won't be, what's that? When you see someone use this implement serializable that line, you will feel uncomfortable. That's something I like to, help you avoid that. Yeah. All right. Next topic. Naming rules for JavaBeans. Yeah. All right. Define a JavaBeans class. Yeah. We use JavaBeans specifications. All right. Many rules are listed in JavaBeans specifications. Although we do not need to study that, that kind of documentation. Yeah. All right. But here we just study the basic important rules. All right, yeah, let's look at first the constructor part. For JavaBeans constructor, there is some requirement for the constructor. First, we know JavaBeans is a Java class, but the Java class, to be qualified as a JavaBeans, it should satisfy the JavaBeans specifications, certain rules. Yeah. Here, I only give you the basic rules. That's that part, I feel enough for this class. Yeah. All right, first, the constructor rule. The rule regarding constructor must have a zero argument constructor. Zero argument constructor. Do you know that? Zero constructor. We know a Java class, you can have multiple constructors, right? With different arguments, different number of arguments. Yeah. And zero, no, so here, zero argument constructor, that is one of the options for you, right? Zero argument constructor, all right, yeah, all right. But here there are two cases for zero argument, either, so here I said either, one of the two cases below. The first one, defining a zero argument constructor explicitly. In your JavaBeans, you define your own zero argument constructor. You write a code, your zero argument constructor. Okay, so that's the first option you can do. If you do that, yeah, you'll pass the constructor requirement for JavaBeans. All right. Second, but many times people don't want to do it. Okay? Why I need to define a zero argument constructor, right? So you have the second option, omitting all constructors. You do not define any constructor. The reason is very simple, because if you omit all constructors, a default constructor is provided. Provided for you. That default constructor is the zero argument constructor. Okay, yeah. So you do not see it, but it's there. All right, zero argument constructor. So then, here, let me give you why this rule is needed. Okay, why a zero argument constructor is needed. Yeah. Because when we use a JavaBeans in web environment, we need a container to create it for us. Yeah. Yeah. So we ask the container to create it for us. All right. When the container creates a JavaBeans for you, the container does not like a non-zero argument constructor, right? Non-zero, if you only have non-zero argument, you need to provide an argument to the constructor. That's, you know, too much work for the container. The container just wants to use the zero argument constructor directly. All right. Yeah. Otherwise, you need to worry about the argument part, right? When you ask computer to construct a JavaBeans for you, you need to provide an argument. You know, that part, you know, not quite friendly for the container, right? So for that reason, in order to make the container's life easier, you need this rule for your constructor. Okay, yeah, all right. Access data. Then we need to consider access data, read and write access data, setters and getters. We need to talk about setters and getters. All right. Okay. No public instance variables. Yeah. You know instance variables, right? Each Java class should have certain number of instance variables. And usually we make a private instance variables, right? Do you use public instance variables? It's rare. It is not recommended. You should avoid it. Yeah. Because no public instance variables, this requirement is for data protection. For data protection. Otherwise, if you make some of the instance variables public, then other people can change the values of your data easily, right? Yeah, messed up, all right? Yeah. So you have to make the data change following your business rules, not in an arbitrary way, because people can change your data in an arbitrary way. That is dangerous. All right, yeah. So the first thing, no public instance variables. All private, all instance variables must be private. All right, that's easy, that part. All right. And here, this instance related to the properties. I need to spend some time to discuss instance variables and properties, the relationship between these two concepts. Okay, all right. Use accessor methods. Yeah. What are accessor methods? Setters and getters. I just mentioned. Set property name, get property name. Yeah. So you need to provide the specific property name. So what's the property? For example, first name. Okay. We have a property called the first name. So then we can have a setter called a set first name, get first name. Another one, last name as the property, set last name, set get last name, things like that. Very simple properties. All right, yeah. All right. Then JSP, data binding feature. Data binding, from the name, you can guess a little bit its meaning. But here, I may like to give you the detail meaning. Yeah. All right. The data binding feature that we use in JSP, basically we copy data between JavaBeans properties, because the data we like to store in JavaBeans properties. Yeah. Usually the data comes from HTML form fields, although there are other forms. Yeah. That's one of the possibilities. Yeah. All right, and the HTML form fields automatically. Yeah. All right, so may have other forms. All right, other forms. We can also do data binding. All right, no. All right. Setup, yeah. So here, in order to do data binding, yeah. So data binding, actually, that's the work of container. The container does that for us automatically, okay? Yeah. So you need to do communication with container. You need to tell container because we need the container to do data binding for us. All right. But you need to tell container how to do it in the right way, right? So that's why we do setup. And the setup, we connect the JavaBeans properties to HTML form fields in certain way. How we look at the case study part. Case study part. All right, case study part. All right, yeah. How the case study part. Yeah. So you will see, you know, one line, setup. All right, yeah. Very simple. Yeah. All right. So here, what the container do? Yeah, here. Yeah, sorry, I have to erase. Yeah. All right. So then after the setup, the container, how does container do the data binding? Very simple. How does the container do data binding for you? The container calls setter and getter automatically. Right? You do not need to call setters, getters when you copy data. Container copy the data by calling setters and getters. Just save you some work. Although that part of work pretty easy, yeah. But that's the reason we use data binding feature. You do not have to. If you want to do data copy manually, you can do that. Still, you can do it. If you want to make the container do that copy, that you can take advantage of it. All right, you can take advantage of that data binding feature. Yeah. All right, so that's the data binding feature. I spent a lot of time explaining that. But later, in our next class, I'll show you case study example. So you will see, you know, how to do those things. Yeah. And I have a tutorial for that. You know, my case study example, I have a detailed tutorial for that. Yeah. So you can study the tutorial by yourself. Yeah. All right. Naming rules for JavaBeans. Then in order to make the compiler to call your setters, getters in a correct way, we need to follow JavaBeans naming rules. Otherwise, the communication breaks. All right, the communication with the container breaks because you do not follow the naming rules. All right, the container, you know, still trying to use the naming rules to figure out your properties, but it fails. Right, you get error. Yeah, you get errors. Yeah. Let's see what kind of naming rules. The purpose, the components built following the rules can be recognized by the tools implementing the specification. All right. Yeah, otherwise, you know, the communication breaks. It can be recognized. The container knows, oh, how to figure out your property names and call the setters and the getters in the right way. Otherwise, call the wrong setters, wrong getters, you know, yeah. All right. Main naming rules. The naming rules pretty simple, pretty straightforward. Yeah. If the property is not a Boolean, yeah, the property value, it's not a Boolean value, okay? The getter method's prefix must be get. Get that property name after it, right after it, all right? Must be get, prefix must be get. But there is a Boolean case. For the Boolean case, the getter method's prefix is either get or is. You can still use get as the prefix. Okay, it's not a violation, but in order to make the readability a little better, people like to use is for better readability of your code. Okay, for example, Boolean value. Suppose you have a number property. That number property, you want to create a getter, so to check if that number is positive or not, right? So that's a Boolean variable. If it's positive, then true. If it's negative, then false, right? Yeah. So you have that kind of thing. Yeah. All right. Suppose that property is called a positive. Positive. That property is a Boolean. Is Boolean. Then when you create your getters, you have two ways to do it. The first is get a positive. Second is positive. You can see is positive from the English language meaning. You check is positive, is supposed to return true or false, right? Yeah. When you use get a positive, you may not expect Boolean value, right? You may expect get positive, you may get some concrete number, non-Boolean value, right? Yeah. So that's why I say if you use this way, you will have better readability. All right. So that's for most Java programmers, they like to use is when they have the Boolean property. All right. But get still legal. Get, not wrong. Yeah. Just the readability is not as good as the is way. All right. Yeah. The setter method's prefix must be set. Yeah. For setter, you only have one way to do it. That's set property name. Okay. All right. The name, yeah, this property, this item is relatively hard to understand. I need to explain this, spend quite some time to explain it. All right. The name of the property is inferred from getters and setters, not through any instance variable in your class. How to understand this one? This one is important. This one, you need to understand the difference between property and instance variable. They are not exactly the same. Instance variable in the class and the property name, they are not necessarily the same. Most of the time they are the same, but they are not necessarily the same. All right. Inferred from getters and setters. I will explain this in more detail after my next slide. Okay, after my next slide. Yeah, because my next slide still, we at the end, we come back to talk about this item another time because it's so important. Otherwise, you may get confused. All right. Yeah. So let me move to the next slide first. All right. Relationship between property name and setter getter. Yeah, because we need to talk about this relationship with much more details first. What's the relationship between the property name and the get setter and the getter? All right. The name of the property is what do you get when you strip off the prefix get and the set and make the first character after that lowercase. Strip off. Look at that. Strip off. Yeah. All right. I will explain that part. I hope I have enough time. I just explained this last slide for this class. I use 15 minutes to explain this last slide. Yeah, because you know, a lot of words I need to use. Yeah. All right. Why in this way? Why in this way? Yeah. All right. A setter getter is exposed to outside tools. We know that. Why? Because we always declare setters and getters public methods, right? Public methods. When we declare our setters, getters as public methods, they are exposed to outside tools. They know all your setters, getters names, public. So they can see all those public methods. All right, so that's the first thing. Second, the name of any instance variable of a JavaBeans is not exposed because they are private, remember? At the beginning, we require no public instance variable, right? They are all private. They're all private because they are private. So they are not exposed to outside tools. All right. Yeah. The processing tools, they cannot see the names of your instance variables. How can they use that? Those names. They cannot use names. All right. Yeah. So then this rule supports data binding. Yeah. Because to get a property from setter or getter, they just strip off get to get a property name. All right. Or from set, strip off set to get property name. Yeah. In that way, so convenient. So convenient. All right. This rule supports the data binding. Supports the data binding. All right. Yeah. All right. But here, yeah, because here I have a lot of space. So I like to use a concrete example to explain this. Otherwise, you may still feel too abstract, right? Too abstract at this point. All right. So let me write a concrete example. Okay. All right. Suppose we have a class, okay, my being. All right. Yeah. All right. All right. So inside it, yeah. Yeah. My being. All right. Yeah. Inside it, yeah. I have a private variable. Suppose it is a string. Okay. Yeah. String. I want to store first name here. All right. Yeah. Lowercase s. A string. Oh yeah. Upper. Yeah. Yeah. All right. So I want to store first name. For first name, I just call simple F name. How about that? It's legal, right? All right. And similarly, private string, last name, L name. All right. But here, they are instance variable. They are private instance variable. They are not exposed to outside tools. All right. Now I do my setter and a getter. Okay. Setter and a getter. All right. First, the getter, I do this. Okay. Yeah. Getter, I do this. Public string get. All right. I call first name. Okay. First name. All right. I do not, although I can call F name, but I like to call first name. All right. I like to call first name. All right. Yeah. But here you can see, here we have first name here, but in the instance variable, it's F name. They are different. They are different. It happens. It could happen. When this happens, then based on our previous slide, we say, and also based on the strip off thing, yeah, how to determine the property. Strip off get, cut off get. Then you make a capital F lowercase, all right? Yeah, make the first character after that lowercase. All right. So F first name. Yeah, first name. So that's how you get the property name. So this is the property. Okay, not that F name, not the property. Okay, not the property. The first name is the property. Yeah. The reason is simple. F name invisible. All right. For processing tools, it is invisible. Nobody knows there is an F name thing. All right. But this first name, get first name, it is exposed to those processing tools. Okay. Yeah. And it can be inferred from the public setter and a getter. That's the reason. That's the reason. All right. Yeah. And for this reason, then the container, they use the public setters, getters, so the container can do data binding. Okay, the container can do data binding. All right. How about that? How about that? How about that? Yeah. So I hope you understand this part a little better. Yeah. Yeah. And but you need to follow the whole logic. Whole logic. If you miss one or two rules, then you may not be able to understand that. Okay. Yeah. All right. Yeah. Although I have another C.4 scopes of JSP and servlets, but let me see. I may not have enough time here. Let me see. Yeah. Oh, I have at least 5 minutes because I only have one slide. 5 minutes. That should be enough. All right. So let's do not waste that 5 minutes. Yeah, because that slide is not that difficult to explain. Yeah. All right. So let me just continue. Yeah. All right. JSP scopes. I mentioned that before. There are 4 different JSP scopes, from largest to smallest. The first one, application scope. It is largest. It covers the whole web application. So if you put the data in that scope, anywhere in your web application, you can access that. But most of the time, people rarely use this. Okay, you really need to find some good reason. Then you use this scope. Yeah. I haven't encountered some situation I need to use application scope. All right. Second one, session scope. Then this is very useful because some data you may want to store it for a while. You may like to use it in multiple pages for that data. For example, the typical use case for this session, shopping cart. Think about that. When you put items in, you need to store there for a while, right? Shopping cart, right? Yeah, that's a good place to implement shopping cart. Okay, for a while. Yeah, session. Yeah, request. the data in the request scope only exists in that request response cycle. After that, it's gone. Okay, after that, it's gone. Request scope, short period of time. Okay, one request response cycle, then it disappears. All right, yeah, that's request scope. Page scope, even smaller. We know page scope even smaller than the request scope, only in one page, because one request scope, it can cover multiple pages. That's possible. One request response cycle, it can cover multiple pages. All right, but page scope, only the data survives in one page. Okay, that's smallest scope. Yeah. All right, then serverless scopes. For the serverless scope, we only have these three: application, session, request, because there is no page concept with respect to servlet. No page, servlet, nothing. All right, so we only use these three scopes for a servlet. All right, access data in scopes. Now we need to learn how to read and write data come and from these scopes. All right, yeah. To and from these scopes. All right, yeah. Store data. Yeah. How to store data? For here, I use request example. Request dot, suppose request is an object. Okay. Oh, here, implicit object. Yeah, here. Because JSP implicit object. Request, implicit object. Request dot set attribute, then two parameters. The first parameter, here I put some name. Yeah, yeah. Because you want to give a name to your parameter, to your object, to your data. So you make some name. Then the value of object, then your object reference. Okay, yeah. So here, the value part should be a Java object. All right. Then the name part here, the name part, object. Yeah. So if you read a document, Java document, the name is a Java object. But usually we use a string. We use a string object. Because when you talk about name, most of the time you expect a string name, right? Yeah. But in the Java documentation, it put the object there. Okay, the general object there as the name part. Yeah. Yeah. But you know, for simplicity, most of the time we just consider the string case. Yeah. All right. Retrieve data. Next, we retrieve data. Request.get attribute. Then you refer to the data, the name of the data. All right, that's the request case. Yeah. But after that, you need to do casting. Why? Because after you retrieve, it takes the form, capital object form. You have to do casting to that specific object type. Then you can use it. That step is important. Recover to original project. That step is important. All right. This casting step is important. All right. Yeah. Yeah. All right. Remove data in session. You may you can, if you do not need to use data in session, you can use this way to remove data from session. Session, another implicit object. Session.remove attribute, then the name of your data object. Okay. Yeah. The reason in session we may need to use this feature is because we don't want to use too much resource. We want to save resource here. Save resource. We do not need to use certain number of data objects. It's better remove them from the session. All right, yeah. Okay, so that's all we need, yeah, for our part C. Yeah, we complete. So we do not need to leave our part D. So part D, basically, I will give you the case study example. All right, yeah, JavaBeans case study example. All right, so that's it. Yeah, and I will, yeah, I will post the first project soon. Okay, I haven't get it ready, yeah, but I will that part soon. All right, so that's it.